But a person needs to go deep inside themselves, our own selves, seeking the heart of God, because it's not found just out in the open and advice. It's not even found from the people who love us always. Sometimes they're not that close to God, either on a particular issue or maybe in their whole life. One deacon stood up in a church that I heard about and started telling people about what the deacon's plans were. And somebody jumps up and says, "Charlie, what are you talking about? You're an atheist, and we all know it." And this was obviously a congregation that was a little bit rabble-rousing at times. And he said, "I am an atheist, but what's that got to do with what I'm talking about?" But going deep inside ourselves, could this man seek the heart of God? I don't know. We would be quick to say, no, he's an atheist. Doesn't even believe in God. An atheist is not a person who doesn't believe in God. An atheist is a person that doesn't believe in any religion. That's different. And you and I take a whole lifetime really to sort that out. Some of you have changed denominations, as I have, looking for God in a different way. Some people have given up the church. There are 2 very popular books on the market right now written by ministers who left the church because they couldn't find God in the church. We don't understand all this stuff, but we understand that we are complicated, difficult people, and God speaks to us, and God's Spirit moves in us in ways we cannot understand. Remember what was said about the Spirit. Nobody knows where it comes from, and nobody knows where it's going. So seeking the heart of God is very personal. It's a very personal thing. And it's a fully engaging thing. And for us people who mostly live in our heads all the time, we are always figuring, we are always planning, we are always managing, we are always analyzing. Many of us rehearse the future as though the script was already written. I told you about some of the thoughts I had when I knew I had to go for surgery. I decided what some of my illnesses were. I also got a lot of advice from people about what they were, not doctors. And I had myself all the way down in the future, which one of my kids was going to be the executor. I mean, dividing up my golf clubs and my model cars, which is really the only thing I have. But so I was rehearsing the future, not adhering to really my own real thinking on this stuff. And until I decided I had to get deep inside myself and be closer to God, could I really come to grips and understand, no matter what happens, I'm still going to be me. And people will have to deal with it, especially my kids. Jesus is calling for much deeper stuff than being only in our heads, which is the way most of us are. And I would never take any argument that I thought could sway me about this. I've heard all the other arguments. But we human beings are mostly in our head. We are mostly thinking, controlling, analyzing. I often think about that when I'm preaching because I don't know what's going through your minds. And if I had a computer printout, somehow there was electrodes connected to you in the pew, and I could see what you were thinking about, it would probably scare the heck out of me. And believe me, it would if you could do it for me too. We need to be close to God, to find ways by ourselves to make these connections. And this is hard because, as I say, we go quickly to our heads, but then Jesus comes with these words. If you can't let go of. In some translations, if you don't love me more. In some translations, if you don't hate. Father, mother, spouse, children, and come to me. So you have all these options because translators look at this language. It's not an exact language, and it's brought out very differently. You realize, of course, that Jesus spoke Aramaic. It's not a spoken language in much of the world anymore at all. And then what he said was translated into Greek. The whole New Testament came to us in Greek because it was the commercial language in those days. And then from Greek, it's then translated into English. And we think it's a literal, exact translation. I don't think so. So Jesus says you've got to let go of all these other people in order to find God. You have to, on your own, be able to search out God. You can't get it from anywhere else. And that's tough language. I mean, every time I've read the scripture passage, and as I say, if you read it in some translations, it says, if you don't hate your mother, hate your father, hate your children, it hits me like a brick in the middle of the head. What's he talking about? And I've heard that verse used in very painful ways among families by someone, sometimes even a pastor, who thinks he's helping or she's helping them. And she isn't helping. Just let them all go. When Jesus says this, it doesn't mean anything other than he's using language that gets right into our heart. Nobody doesn't pay attention to somebody who says, you know, you got to kind of hate your family. You got to give up your family. You got to let go. You've got to love me more than all of these. But it doesn't mean you don't love them too. I mean, look at the whole list of ways Jesus said you have to love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And so we know that that's the prime commandment. When people said, what must I do? Quite often that was the answer. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. And in order to love yourself, you have to go deeper spiritually. And so when he says, give up and love me, he means that the call is to this intimate spirituality, the very deepest things in your life. And any married person, I would think, if I could get them to be absolutely honest, and if I was honest with myself, there are things you will not tell your spouse. Some deep parts of you never come up. Because mostly we are afraid if we wander around inside our own hearts, inside our own soul, there may be something there lacking that will scare us and bring us fear. There is nothing lacking inside you. There is nothing that God will not deal with, that God cannot forgive, that God doesn't love, or return God's love off towards you because of those things. There is nothing inside you but the possibility of finding God more deeply. That's the whole promise. So far as I can tell, that's the whole promise of Scripture. God will not let us go. There may be things we need to let go of, but God will never, never let us go. And letting go a lot of the stuff in our own heads is also a search for truth. I'm amazed sometimes at the stereotypes that people are ready to step out with, you know. Some idea you got somewhere along the line, some idea you got maybe from your parents, and it becomes a stereotype. It's almost like a template, you know. You lay this template over life. It's the same template all the time, and it's the same response, and nobody can change you. I've said before, my best friend Al Anderson used to say, you can't confuse my mother with the facts. She was a Swede, however, Pauline, so. You guys know about the rivalry between Swedes and Norwegians? It's a very interesting story, isn't it? Anyway.